to all our esteemed panelists, guests, audiences of the day. Welcome you on behalf of ASSOCHAM as the co-chairman for National Council of Skilling and Entrepreneurship here at ASSOCHAM for today's webinar, which is on a very, very important and vital topic, which is the different dimensions of skill development. At the outset, I would like to welcome all the distinguished speakers and attendees who are participating in this important and timely webinar on the topic of skill development. According to 2019 Employmentability Skills Report by British Council, India is a fast-growing economy, which would require a large pool of workers with close to 63% working age population in the skilling pool by 2022. An increased migration of the workers from the rural to the urban sectors of the economy, India realizes that it has the need for a well thought out and executed strategy to provide a new set of skills through vocational training in order to effectively absorb this additional workforce and sustain economic growth. To cover the widespread problem of unemployment and with an objective of creating a workforce that has improved skills and knowledge that can result in gaining access to decent employment and enhancing India's competitiveness in the global labor market, the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India, has launched various initiatives like Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana in the year 2015. The Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship is all set to launch the third phase of its flagship development scheme, PMKVY, early next year with a special focus on COVID-related skills. My dear friends, the third phase of PMKVY will focus on imparting skills related to healthcare, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, home delivery, sanitizing and cleaning services, and logistics. Services that have become extremely important during the COVID pandemic. This scheme will see a paradigm change in how training is implemented and is a precursor of a much longer and bigger scheme, which is being conceptualized for implementation from next year onward. Given the changing world order, and more so to meet the skilling needs of the future generation, training of the present youth force have become an integral part of boosting capabilities and enhancing employment opportunities, which are instrumental in building the economy and improving the society. ASSOCHAM actively participating in the promotion of skill development programs in various parts of India and in supporting the Honorable Prime Minister's ambitious project Skill India campaign, which aims to train over 40 crore people in the country in different skills by 2022. As an apex chamber, ASSOCHAM has started imparting various skills, government schemes such as Samarth, DDU-GKY, TITP, etc. ASSOCHAM has been supporting the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship and Ministry of Labor and Employment, Ministry of Rural Development, and other ministries to create a conducive ecosystem for skill development in India in the form of promotion and advocacy, research studies, PPP models, assessments, and industry-driven skilling modules. With these opening remarks, I once again welcome all of you for today's important discussion on skill development. We have with us a very esteemed, experienced, and hands-on list of panelists and guests who are going to today discuss this important topic and throw light on much needed agendas. To start with, I would like to request Shri Ashish Jain, who's the CEO, to state, is Ashish ji there?
Yes, I am there. Sorry, I was mute.
Right. So Shri Ashish Jain, the CEO of Healthcare Sector Skill Council of Mr. Ashish Jain is the CEO of Healthcare Sector Skill Council of India, which aims to facilitate create a robust and vibrant ecosystem for quality vocational education and skill development in allied healthcare. Mr. Jain completed his post-graduation in business management in '96 and comes with more than 20 years of experience in industry, government, academic, and global atmosphere. Prior to joining HSSC, he was director at CII, and he has handled manufacturing sectors as well as associations. He has traveled to various countries across the networking platforms across the globe, and we would like to welcome you, Ashish ji. Please throw light on today's agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairman. I think for this, opening remarks and the brief introduction. I think I'll take it up from where, Chairman, you have left, in the sense that you mentioned about that the focus of the the government schemes are also on the healthcare as well, which is probably an important aspect with, of course, with other sectors. And given the current scenario, I think the healthcare assumes prominence in terms of skilling, in terms of the requirement which would be required for our sector today. And I think we see a huge scope and huge requirement of skill development in the area of healthcare today. In the COVID scenario and the post-COVID as well, because there will be a lot of opportunities which will be there for post-COVID as well, which we are already working with the government today in terms of various government agencies. We are already working with them to see that how we do that. So I'll focus myself on some of the points which were mentioned in the emailers about what we need to do. First point was about the vocational education at the school level. So I would just like to state that for healthcare, this has been already under the aegis of the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. I think the school level has been already tapped in for quite a number of years now. And the skill training is happening at the school level for sure for at least 5 years, which I'm aware of, where a school-going student at class 9th is enrolled into a vocational subject, and by the time he or she completes class 12 or 10th, they have the vocational skilling certificate with them. So in case they had to drop out for any reason, they had this, they have a country like the dropouts we have at class 10 and the class 12th. I think it's been very useful. And it's not only for healthcare sector. I see my colleague Anand there from construction. So every sector which is actually working in the area in the schools today, be it construction, apparel, beauty. So all are, I think, are actually imparting this school level training for sure. But the more important point, which I think we require need to address, and which is being addressed by the National Education Policy very recently, is I think we need to link this vocational education to higher education or the formal education. And for that, I think we recently, a committee has been also constituted into in the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, where they're trying to work out a credit framework from the vocational to the educational side, and how this and vice versa, how this will happen. And this is a very important step. Vocational education has come a long way, given that it has always been the focus of the top leadership of our country, that we had traveled a long way from what we were 5 years back. But if you see, still till the time we actually connect it with the regular education, I think it will have a certain more fillip to it if we can do that, because a person can from vocational move to the formal education and back, as in a vice versa, both can be possible. So I think that is more important, because even if you look at the current mindset of the parents, they still believe in degrees and diplomas to a certain extent. So that's something which as a skilling ecosystem, we are trying to address that issue. And that's been very well guided by the top leadership of the country, saying that the importance of the skill set, the importance of the competencies has been worked out and has been looked into it, and I think has been at the forefront, and that's why we see that we have traveled a long path over the 5 years. More important is, I think, when we talk about once we have this framework in place and we have started the movement of mobility of students from vocational to educational, I think scaling up is also one of the things which is required. And scale can happen once we have more and more partners with us. And this is definitely, kind of a kind of an area where we need more partnership. People are already working, putting them all into one platform, which I think mission has done beautifully, in the sense that we have created now, has been able to convert so many schemes, like you mentioned about DDGKY scheme or a Samat scheme or PMKY and various state skill development schemes, which have been now brought into some convergence. One, I think we are moving to what we have been talking about, one standard, one nation. So, for example, if I have to train people in the healthcare, there has to be one standard for one country. It can't have multiple standards. The state may have a different standard of training, and the center would have different standard of training. So we are moving into that, and the Ministry of Skill Development, I think, one of the biggest the achievement is that they have been able to bring in the convergence with the state governments, with various ministries, which the skilling is happening right now. At least we have converged onto a standard which is there, which is being regulated by NCVT. And I'm happy to share that today only NCVT has released its guideline for the awarding bodies and the assessing bodies. So there's a lot of work which is happening here. It's an evolving ecosystem where a lot of work is going on. So as I mentioned, partnerships are very, very important for anything to succeed. And if you look at the entire ecosystem, skilling ecosystem, starting from NSDC onwards, so that is also a public-private partnership in a sense. And if you look at this sector skill ecosystem, we are also a partnership, and we always have promoted partnership with either the industry, with the NGOs, with the training partners, assessment partners, to see that how we can bring in the more and more people into it and how we can actually benefit the youth of the country. If you look at the current scenario, I think there's a lot of discussion happening around digitization. How can we, go for an online learning? Is it possible? Not possible? What models, etc. I would say that current, scenario has actually given us, that like we are doing this conference today. I think nobody would have assumed that we could do a conference online like this. We should have been sitting up in a setup, in some physical place, and we would not have actually thought of, actually organizing a conference like this. So this is a change which has come in. I think this is a change in mindset which has happened for people also now, that they started realizing there are a lot of things which can happen online. And I think that will also be happening in the skill development as well and skill education as well. But having said this, I had just a point of a caution here also. I think it will be a sector specific. Few sectors would be very, very good in terms of the going towards the blended mode or a digital mode. Few sectors will require the hands-on training. Say, for instance, I talk about healthcare sector. There's only limit to which we can go, in terms of digital training or the online training. At the end of the day, we would need to provide them hands-on skills for sure, so that we are assured, and the patient who they are working with are assured that they have the requisite skills, have been trained for that. I just wanted to quote one of the examples which Honorable Prime Minister, I think, spoke about. When we impart any skill set or anything, any training on the online, so I think knowledge component can definitely be transferred easily. But if you talk about skills, which is different, it still may require some hands-on training before the skills can be imparted and can be assessed that yes, the person has got the skill. So there's two components. Yes, knowledge definitely would be imparted, but the skills would still require some hands-on experience, some on-site training for that person to be delivered, especially for areas like healthcare, where we deal with the lives of people at the end. So I would say that we had to go in an approach where we can do, let's say, some part of it in an online mode and some can be done in the on-site mode as well, because that is definitely required. And in all our qualification specs anyway today also, we had mandated that it has to be an on-the-job training for sure. So I think that can be completed there. The person can complete some online training and then can move on to the the hospital or healthcare facility for doing on-the-job training, which will also be the hands-on training. If you look at the complete, some of these things, probably the kind of ecosystem which we are emerging now, I think, but today we are more open towards online. Earlier, I think we were a little reluctant to say that whether online can happen. As I mentioned already, whether online meetings can take place or not, that was also an issue. Today, we all have an online meetings, very comfortably. We are doing this conference, I think, very comfortably, and we have more than 140 participants who are there attending this meeting today. So I think that's the way to go ahead. But yes, there's a lot of exploration, a lot of learning has to happen, how we can use this technology much more to see that the percentage of the online learning can go up for sectors, especially like healthcare. So I'll rest myself here. In case there are any questions, I'm happy to participate.
Well, thank you so much, Ashish ji, for your words of wisdom. And I'm sure with the kind of inputs that you have given are very, very relevant for today. Of course, we understand that the training cannot be digital completely, but yes, like you said, we have to make inroads for digital plus hands-on training to best suit the industry. And definitely the times today have taught us how to make a blend of both the things as required by the industry. Just like right now we are on this conference, which we had not thought of earlier. Similarly, we are sure under your able guidance, the Healthcare Sector Skill Council will come up with some innovative programs, training programs, where student can get the benefit of being trained without much mobilization needs, and also he can get hands-on with the practical classroom training. Thank you so very much for your inputs. We now move on to our next industry address, and that's by Colonel Anand Kumar Singh, retired, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Construction Skill Development Council of India, a very, very important sector, which I think is the largest employer in the nation. So Colonel Anand Kumar is a veteran from Indian Army Corps of Engineers. He is a postgraduate in civil engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Chennai, and has 30 years of rich experience in combat engineering as well as planning, execution, and management of infrastructural projects in Indian Army and Air Force. During his tenure in Army, he served in all operational areas, including active operations Pawan in Sri Lanka and Operation Parakram. He has been involved in prestigious projects of Army and Air Force. His specialization is structural design of civil projects, which gave him the opportunity to serve as design specialist and quality assurance thrice in Army and Air Force. Over to you, Colonel Anand Kumar Singh.
Thanks, Maninder. Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. I represent construction sector, which is the second largest employer of the country, and the highest employer for the migrant workers. It is highly unorganized, and over 95% of the workers working in construction sector, they are either minimally skilled or not skilled and uncertified. 47% of youth, 47% of people working in the sector are below 30 years of age. This is I am telling because this is the scenario where we are going to work with, and whatever device we bring it to meet the aspiration of the youth and provide a career-based employment or opportunity to them, that we'll have to think of. This is, you see, the construction sector. If I talk about the better part of the construction sector, that is one of the fastest growing sector. Wages comparatively is higher than the other sectors we are talking about. Entrepreneurship development are very high, whether we talk about the construction or material management or the construction management. Similarly, the construction sector offers you the opportunity of employment not only in urban areas, but equally it offers the opportunity in rural areas or the semi-urban areas, we can call it. It offers a great opportunity for those who want to migrate outside and work, whether in Gulf countries or other countries. But you see, that's when we talk about the youth joining the sector, in fact, that takes a beating. As on that, if I look at my sector and construction sector, youth are not very much willing to join the construction sector because of the various reasons. One I have told just now, few enumerated, and few more will be there, which requires the terms condition or the working condition that the sector offers to everybody. But yes, when we are looking any viable solution, how to attract the youth in early age, or otherwise what kind of options we should offer to them. We need to look at that we are providing them a good career progression. We are linking to main education system. This gets more prominence in construction sector, like previous speaker Ashish said. In fact, we need to link it to the main education criteria with this. Then we need to have some follow-up icons where the people can join, seeing the icons in the industry. This is where we are talking about, and my mention was there about the skill competition, recognition, or social acceptance, because a lot of social acceptance issues will be there if you are joining the construction sector. Coming up to what we are talking about, the public and private partnership. If we look at the construction sector, it lacks the training infrastructure. And that is where, when we analyze it, if a youth looks even for the construction sector, the opportunities of getting skilled are very minimal. So when we look for the infrastructural development in the sector of training, that takes an importance. Similarly, the technology that is trickling down. Construction might be there, but when we are talking about the training or skilling, the technology availability is very less. So when we look for the transverse or different dimensions for skill employment, what we are looking for, we are looking for that how the career of the youth that can be guided after skilling. If you want to guide it, it needs to be introduced at the earliest stage, and that is where we come from the school level onwards. We need to introduce the sector opportunities which are there on the plate, and how it can be imparted to them. We are talking about the changes which the sector is going to offer. If you talk about what is the changes that is going to happen, might be based on the material we are using, might be on the equipments we are using, and similarly the technology that is changing. The construction sector is not far away, where we are talking about the 3D printing also, that has already started in other countries, and these are not very far when the 3D printing is going to come to construction sector also. So when we talk about how to impart the training now in this aspect, we have been talking at many forums that how online skilling or the training infrastructural gap can be created. What we think here, that like Ashish brought out, that the hard skill that needs to be given on the ground, and it requires the physical training of the trainees. The only training that can be given online can be theoretical part, which can be given by online. Rest of the things that needs to be given on the ground in a physical form, that needs to be given. And this is what we are looking for, and we have been trying to provide this opportunity to the trainees on this aspect. We have been already tying up with L&T for creation of a platform where online training can be provided to the candidates. But that forum gives you the opportunity for training on the demonstration part, on the theory part. But the physical form part, that will be given on the ground. As per our analysis, the online training, the theory part, that can be given 35 to 40%, which can come online, and 60 to 70% that needs to be given on the ground itself. But as per our analysis, if we analyze that way, the cost of the training is not going to be high on that aspect. and we'll be able to meet the requirements as per the PMKY norms. But when we analyze virtually the complete ecosystem in terms of how it can be introduced at the school level or college level, and the youth can be attracted to the sector, then we need to have the online training system of the theory part, where the school candidates also, or school students also, they can be introduced to the construction skills, or the college students, they can be introduced to the skills available in construction sector, opportunities available in the construction sector, and they can be encouraged to join the construction sector. In fact, we look at the aspects in construction sector, it offers one of the best opportunity to the youth as far as the career development is concerned. And this is what comes in the construction sector. Construction sector is a area where challenges are more. Like I brought out, it requires also so that the youth can be attracted to the construction sector. One could be like we had been talking about that yes, NSQF alignment has been done, but when we look at the wages, the alignment has not been done as per the NSQF alignment. Similarly, there are no rules and regulations that any employer, whether he needs to skill or employ the skilled workers or the unskilled workers, neither any employment restrictions are there or anybody. If you are going to a sector, whether you are skilled or unskilled, whether you can be employed. So this area leaves a lot of desirability that how the wages could be regulated, how the employment could be employment could be regularized, and until this area is addressed, perhaps the willingness of employer to get the skilled workforce or the training or the workers to get skilled will not be available. So somewhere the regularization of this area is required. If we regularize this area, there might be investment coming in the creation of training infrastructure, whether in the physical form or the online platform or on-site training. But until that is addressed, this area is addressed, there will not be any incentive for employers to invest in training infrastructure. Neither any interest will be there with the trainees or the, I can say, the workers to get employed. So there has to be some conditions, or there has to be some driving force where skilled workers will be forced, or they will be willing to join a training part, and at the same time the employers, they will be willing, or I can say they will have the condition to invest in training infrastructure or get the skilled workforce coming to their sector. This regularization needs to be regularized. Once this is regularized, whether that is the wages or whether that is the skilling, if that is regularized, then we'll have the vast area opening up where people will be ready to invest on skilling efforts. That is my thought process. Then people will be able to invest in training infrastructure. As on date, if I look, the construction sector directly or indirectly employs near about 600 million people, and more than 600 lakh people, I can say 6 crore. And 35 lakh people are joining every year as a fresh. But if we look at the availability of the training infrastructure, that's very minimal. And even you include the ITIs, that's hardly availability, or the private institution, that's hardly near about 5 lakh. So there is a gap, and that gap needs to be filled up. It will be easier to fill the gap when we go for the online. But online has got its limitation. but somewhere it needs to be explored, and we are trying to explore at our end that how this gap can be filled, or optimal utilization of the training infrastructure, or creation of training infrastructure, or introduction of these courses in schools or colleges where the load on the existing infrastructure is minimized. So this is where it has to be thought of. Construction is again developing, and we need to adopt the new technologies also. On for that, we need to have the updated the training infrastructure, basically technologically supported training infrastructure. This is what I had to say at this moment.
Thank you very much, Colonel Anand Kumar. And we are very, very encouraged to know that in a sector like construction sector, also the training can be delivered around 30 to 35% online. She is currently panelist. Welcome you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for giving your valuable time for today. Mostly Sona Valiappa Group in the with great strategic service. We welcome you, sir, to today's conference and looking forward to hearing your words of wisdom. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Singh. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. Thanks to ASSOCHAM and all the stalwarts who are here. Like all the previous speakers had said, system of our formal skilling in India is only 2.3% when compared to 96% by countries like South Korea and things like that. And what's post-COVID, everyone is working remotely. And what has really worked well is going digital. So if you look at the Indian IT industry, it developed in a crisis. Because of the 1999 crisis of the Y2K is when we started looking at Indian IT industry in a bigger way. So similarly, COVID has given us this opportunity now to actually become digital. And in terms of taking skill development into digital. And if you see the World Bank, they have estimated that the total loss in the Indian educational sector would be $400 billion. Is a net effective loss. And compare this to the post-COVID world, where the world is moving more into automation. Industry 4.0 is already there. And COVID, if not for anything, is going to accelerate more of automation. So when you start automating, that means you need a higher level of skills. So going digital is again in line with that. And when the whole world is going online, so at least we need to go looking at blended learning. So I think our Colonel Sir from the construction industry was mentioning, how they have done going digital, and 35% or something like that is being skilled. So if you look at it, even in the construction area where I had the opportunity to go just last week, and we started I mean, we actually brought in about 200 employees, construction workers from Bihar by aircraft. So that's the shortage today. So we were trying to see how can we get them productive and start learning. So we came up with this easy gamification of asking each of the employee to take their own mobile phone. Everyone had a mobile phone there. So we took a mobile phone and asked them to do 2-minute video of whatever activity they were doing and compare it with the best within their team. We broke them into 5 teams and then had a competition and then gave the award winner 10,000 rupees as a gamified model. So, I mean, we always think that construction and agriculture are probably very difficult to go digital, but using these small tools, it's very easy to actually go ahead. And by getting digital, I think we also get to a level of standardization of skill training, because today it's very, I mean, there are some teachers are excellent and some teachers are not excellent. So how do you get here? So that the best way to use it is use a blended learning methodology where we can use some e-content, some on-the-job training, and some actual training to go across to this. So the new educational policy talks about getting vocational education more into the structure right from secondary education. I think it's very important to have that level. I think if you remember in 1953, Rajaji actually introduced this concept of having a half-a-day school and a half-a-day learning along with your parent or whoever you want to learn with. So if you look at Steve Jobs and see why Steve Jobs became Steve Jobs and the quality he had is because he noticed his father, who was a carpenter. So that's how important these skills can be. So by getting in diplomas and things like that for Sector Skill Council heads who are here, it's great to have all these the learned people here. But I would urge the Sector Skill Council to actually come up with a model curriculum for secondary school education. What should the curriculum be? What should the curriculum be for a diploma? And very similar to what AICTE has done in terms of getting the model curriculum. So I think it'll be important for Sector Skill Council to do that. And also more so in today's world, where the world is moving faster, you need to keep up with the pace of technology. And in order to do that, I think Germany and America have done a great job by actually having annual CEUs, continual educational units. So I think Sector Skill Councils should come up with an annual assessment and say that you need to requalify yourself for each of these standards. I think NASSCOM has done a great job there by actually having future skills and enumerating that. So in that line, I think that would help everyone to say that I have actually graduated in 2020 with Sector Skill Council, like in healthcare, who one of the speakers spoke about. So I know what are the latest techniques today in new machines or something like that, or handling a COVID crisis. So these are things that we keep learning new. So I think that's a very nice thing to do. And something very interesting is through our skill development journey, we have found that 2 remarkable people, one was a second standard dropout who went on to actually start a mechanical engineering company and helping automobile mechanics actually employ perhaps 10 or 15 of them. And the other one is a beauty technician program that we had. One of the ladies who came in actually today has perhaps 50 to 80 beauty parlors around the area in the south of India. So I think this is great that the skill development and entrepreneurship here with ASSOCHAM as well as the Skill India are trying to put together. So, but in order for this to happen, in conclusion, what I wanted to say is the ease of doing business needs to be there. It's great that PMKVY is coming in version 3.0. But I think what needs to be done is very similar to how America handled the COVID crisis and actually brought in the stimulus package was given to the industry and saying that if you employed so many people per person, we give you the 8-week salary, and that was credited into a company's accounts. So I think the same model needs to go in instead of the money coming in from the government to the skilling companies. the money should go into the actual industries for creating jobs. So if the industry gets the money, and then the money comes in through the skilling companies. So I think if this route is changed, then actual job creation would actually happen, because right now we don't know which skill is needed where and how, but the industry is the one who's going to ultimately employ people. So I think that's the key my last thought that I leave you with. So because we need job creation, every 1.28 seconds, we need to generate a job in India, 1 million jobs a month. So that's what our focus should be. How do we get the jobs done? I think that is the message that I would like to convey. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Shri Chokovaliappa, sir, and your points are very well taken, especially about the model that you just discussed, which emphasized on the half-day school and half-day practical training. At times we have to figure out how we can become that creative, that innovative, and how we can bring that into action at the ground level as well. And you rightly said, where one side we need to skill the manpower, the other side we have to balance it out. The entrepreneurs coming into a balance to be struck in this particular vertical. Thank you so very much for your kind words, sir. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, we invite our next speaker from the industry. That's a very, very important. Yeah. Before launching NGO. Yeah, Mr. Bhaumik, can you hear us?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot, Chairman. Your voice was breaking, so I could not get the command. Thank you. Thanks a lot for the nice introduction. Many speakers have spoken about the skills continuum in India and how things are changing after COVID-19, and what all we are going to foresee in next couple of years in terms of changes happening in the entire ecosystem. My experiences and learning will be probably little different from what others have spoken, because I come from a segment which is more of enabling sector for entire skills continuum in India. I represent large CSR box, which is about enabling CSR partnerships between corporate, non-profit, and government. So I will begin with one very specific data that when you look at how companies are investing their CSR fund on skills development and skill development related programs, so largely it's coming to effectively 8 to 10% every year. So we have been mapping almost 1,200 companies every year, their CSR portfolio project by project. And when we look at different kind of CSR programs, so we really find that lot many things are happening from CSR fund side in terms of enabling the ecosystem, skilling the candidates, building capacities of skill development agencies, non-profits to deliver on the ground, and also connecting the dots in the entire skills ecosystem. But after COVID-19, the era that we entered in, things have changed rapidly. and it made all of us think about new models, identify new innovations in delivery of skilling program, and also in terms of entire employment market, in terms of entire jobs market, things have rapidly changed and new models are emerging. So obviously those who are investing in skilling program, those who are trying to align the demand and supply by enabling the skilling program, they have to also reinvent themselves in terms of how to invest, where to invest, and what is going to be the future potential of the current investment that they are planning. So in that context, we have seen that many CSR foundations and companies have realized and adopted supporting digital learning platforms, going for and vouching for the digital learning, digital skilling programs across the system. Obviously, we find it difficult for manufacturing sectors where hands-on experience is required, but there also we have seen many innovations happening. That's what the beauty of India as a country and we as a demography has, that we really keep innovating and we have our own jugaad system. So in that system itself, we are finding that many of the companies are adapting models from different developed countries and now customizing those models in the context of India specific skills ecosystem. So we have seen many simulations coming in, many social enterprises developing their own application system for the manufacturing sector, where learners and job seekers can learn different skill sets. But here the caveat is, are we really able to make the demand and supply? Are we really able to cater to the demands which are coming currently from the sectors, or which are going to come in next couple of years? Because job roles are changing at a rapid pace. Entire employability landscape and entire employment landscape is changing at a very faster pace. And things like COVID or pandemic like this are really going to fasten the process of these changes which are happening. So we have to be more agile about our skills development program. We have to be more adaptable about the changes which are happening. And that's where the role of these enabling agencies, whom I term CSR foundations and corporates who are supporting the program, they need to play that role of bringing that agility in the entire skills ecosystem. Because they are the ones who are really able to use fund for different kind of new experiment, to bring in innovations and to create new models. And that's where we are also working with many corporates right now to create new models of skill development programs and help and handhold skill development agencies at the grassroots level to move to the digital platforms and have hybrid model. We have seen that many of the CSR foundations and skill development agencies have started a couple of programs now after once the lockdown 4.0 is over. So things are happening in the couple of geographies with limited capacities, but still we believe that this is the turning point for the entire skill development agencies to go and adapt for the hybrid models, as most of the speakers have already spoken. Here comes the most important element of this entire new changes which are happening. When job market changes, candidates' aspirations and candidates' ambitions to be part of the jobs market also changes or gets transformed by the situations which are coming in. So in that context, when you look at current jobs market, or when you look at the candidates' aspirations, candidates are definitely having multiple options. One, they can be part of the jobs ecosystem. They can get employed in one of the companies or organizations. Other is about being a part of the gig market economy. And this is one large segment which is emerging across the system. Be it about services or be it about product, we have seen gig platforms coming in and emerging at a rapid pace, and they are the ones who are giving more of a self-professional or self-entrepreneur opportunities to many individuals and young skilled candidates. So that's where we have seen, and we are now mapping those things, where candidates are more open towards gig market opportunities than to be part of regular employment opportunities, because there they are getting freedom of work hours. They can select their own work hours. They can select what industry they want to be part of, and they can also select how much they want to earn in a day in terms of the range that is available. If they want to earn only 400 rupees, they can work 6 hours, 7 hours. If they want to earn 800 rupees in a day, they work for 12 hours. So they select that agility that gig market offers. So that has really transformed the aspirations of the candidates. And we have seen a lot of movement happening at that front. And the third one is about creating entrepreneurial ecosystem at the local and regional level. And that's a big segment which is going to emerge gradually. When we see more digital things happening, when we see more online things coming in, more and more new models of local entrepreneurship ecosystem, local enterprise creation will emerge. I was speaking to one of the CSR foundations, large one, just half an hour back, around 3:30. Around 2:30. And there the CSR head was telling me that they have supported a skill development of around 100 candidates coming from different background, and they have kept the batch size very small and this was different skills and trade. And what they did, they picked up 2 to 3 candidates from each of the batch and from different skilling and trade. And they created a pool of those all candidates, and they created one enterprise in one tier 3 city. And that enterprise served as a kind of a gig platform for the local city population itself. So it's a mix of electricians, plumbers, carpenters, all type of different regular requirement which happens in a household. So they have provided them support to create their own one toll-free number. So any native population of the city calls on that number, and they have any problem, any requirement for electrician or regular repairing or any other kind of plumbing, they call on the number, and within 2 hours, that particular group of professionals reaches their household and serves them. So that's the beauty of the entire skilling ecosystem, that we are not just creating the employable workforce, but we are also creating micro entrepreneurs, which are ultimately graduating to the micro enterprise creation. And that's where I see most of the opportunities coming in for us in next couple of months and years, where we will be able to create job creators through skilling program, not just those who are getting employed. So that's where the entire focus of even CSR foundation companies is shifting. So they are looking at the entire 360-degree continuum. We work with large companies and foundations, and we have seen this entire change of how do you look at skill development ecosystem. So the transition has happened where they are now just don't want to churn out or produce job seekers. They want to churn out micro entrepreneurs, and that's where things are happening with IBM platform Skills Build, where we are working a lot on digital skill continuum, building capacities of non-profits and skill development agencies. On the other side, we have a program with Bosch India where we are mapping profile of the candidates. So we have started another platform called Project Alamban, which is AI-enabled platform, and which allows you just to call on a basic number in your own language. If you are a migrant, you are a youth sitting in Odisha or sitting in Nagpur or anywhere, you can call on that number. That particular system will ask you 5-6 questions, and it will map your entire aspirations. It will map your entire profile. And on the basis of the profile that is getting created, you are mapped with a job giver, or you are mapped with a company's requirement. So we right now have 12,000 plus opportunities available on the platform, and we are using the technology a lot to do the matchmaking of the candidates and the job givers. And at the same time, we are also adding in this pie where we are giving them additional certification. For example, if candidate is skilled but doesn't have a certification from a authority, from a skill sector council, so we also provide support through CSR foundations to get the assessment done and get the relevant certification under RPL. On the third level, we are also supporting those candidates which are not skilled to provide provide them relevant aspiration based skilling program digitally or on site by connecting them with CSR foundations or with other skilling agencies. And then we are assuring them the placement in the organization. So we are working with many companies on 360-degree continuum of skills and enterprise creation. And that's where we see many of players in the CSR are interested now to build the capacities of the organizations and do the right matchmaking. I will stop here because I know there are many speakers. If there is any question, I'll be available for those. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhuveshwar, and your ideas are certainly very, very innovative. Like you said, the artificial that you are using in order to do the matchmaking and that too on an automatic level is very, very innovative. We would want you to share all these brilliant ideas of yours with all the audiences and panelists through emails or through social media platforms more, so that we all can contribute to it. Talking about the flexibility for the workforce, you're very, very right that we need to have autonomous workers kind of a system where the micro entrepreneurs are more and more in number and they can contribute to ecosystem as a whole. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhumik.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Moving ahead, we would like now go on to special address by Shri Jaykant Singh, who's representing NSDC here between us. He belongs to NSDC State Government and Citizen Engagement profile. Mr. Jaykant Singh, a 95 civil engineer from Birla Institute of Technology, has carved an indelible imprint of his astute managerial skills in all responsible positions given to him since last 24 years. Based on intensive research, he developed a mechanism for skill development, financing and monitoring for strengthening the institutional credit availability to private training partners operating under market-led free-based model. Scope of skill development were weak or missing. His current engagement is a senior state head for state governments and citizen engagement skills, wherein core responsibility is to extend the frontiers of states across country and to ensure it remains in the forefront of skill development and implementation of schemes, state and national skill competitions. We welcome you, Shri Jayanji.
Thank you so much, Maninderji. It's a pleasure and a privilege for me to be here with the audience, august audience. Good afternoon to the chief guest, fellow speakers, participants, and the organizers, all of you, a very good afternoon. I would like to divide the discussion into three parts: the current situation, where we are, areas of intervention, and who all are the stakeholders. Now, if we see the current situation, we just heard about migration which has happened during the COVID period. So many jobless people all around. India has got 47 crores of people who are in the working age group. And out of that, 4.69% of the workforce are skilled as per NSSO, the last which census we report. Now, for me, this is a big question. Are we having only 5% of our people workforce is skilled? I think we all need to, awaken up and look into this issue, that it's not only 4.69%, it's the mechanism in which it is being documented, and the industry, the government, everybody has to look into this issue of 4.6%. I think we must not be less than 20% at any point of time, if not more than 50%. Because if we look at the parameters, how other countries where, like China says 80% of the workforce are skilled. So they have started their education or skilling right from the school level. First 9 years, the education system is free. Then 50% goes into vocation, 50% goes into education. When even in the higher one, these 50% who are into education may go into vocation again. So that's how, the percentage is so high. But if you see India with their, historical places and all the skill sets we have progress. We are a developing nation, and our people is going abroad and doing all the work in other countries. A welder is working across the country, an Indian welder. It doesn't mean they are unskilled. So first of all, we have to think of this 47 crore people, out of which 63% we heard are youth. So how do we facilitate, how do we construe them to be skilled? I think this is a question which we all need to think through and come to an answer, and take it up at different level so that we address it. 12 million people joins the workforce year on year. I think the larger problem today is for the 47 million crore people who are already into the workforce. For the 12 million people who joins the workforce year on year, I think we have far moved with good infrastructure to facilitate training and take care of the training needs of these people year on year. Now, as industrialization or mechanization is taking place, automation is taking place, we can see the nature of job is changing. The perception of work and workplace is undergoing rapid changes with the development of new technologies. While the traditional perception of work gives importance to physical labor, the new job market emphasizes on skills. And if we see how technological changes are so deeply engraved in the job sector that when we have to make a division between head and the hands, the new technologies make hands disappear completely from the workforce. And when we talk about new technologies, we can see machine learning, internet, IoT, intelligence, artificial intelligence. So many things are coming up, automation is coming up, and these are areas where the traditional way of workforce will lose job. You all will agree that job has become a commodity that can be hired and fired at any moment based on skill and the efficiency. The workers need to constantly adapt themselves in terms of technical skills to changing market demands. What has come up now is the gig economy. It's the new job market that provides employment on short-term contracts. Today, as per statistics, the trend of hiring drivers, personal assistants, delivery boys, cleaning workers, and even professionals like nurses, medicine, journalism, information technology, and even lawyers is on the rise in this format. One could see from its description the new forms of employment known as job sharing, crowdsourcing, interim management, voucher-based work, portfolio work, maintain a very flexible attitude towards employment. So these are new ways or trends in the economy which is coming up, or new ways of doing business. For me, what is a skill? Application of knowledge for any economic outcome. That I think is a skill, or human intervention leading to change in income. I mean, this is what skills is. Now, if I go to the areas of intervention, how do we make India the skill capital of the world, which is the topic, one of the areas which we need to focus upon. Now, improve the quality. We have got infrastructure which is scalable, which is reachable, available across the country now. Every department at the state level and at the center, they run the skill training program. Lot many centers are available, but where do we lack is a good infrastructure in terms of tools, tackles, equipments, and also trainers. So this is one area where we need to address. Another is exposure to skills. Now, as we all know that knowledge without application is of no use. So what we see, we believe. When we talk about the skills, we need to showcase, or the participants, the beneficiaries need to see how skilling is done and how work is done. That gives them more confidence. We talked about starting skill early, and the new education policy do talk about starting from class 6 onwards. And next year onwards, I believe most of the schools will contemplate to start vocational courses in their from class 6 onwards. And I think with Ministry of Skill Development coming up with the National Council for Vocational Education and Training, they will come up with the complete guidelines and curriculum, content, the assessment mechanism, the certification mechanism. I think it will be a very strong body, administrative body, which will ensure complete transparency and also easy way of doing things. PPP, we all talked about that we are very much there. Blended mode of learning, I think during the COVID period, India has developed in-house infrastructure and capacity to deliver blended mode of learning across the country. Now, in last few years, if you see, lot of work has already been done by the stakeholders. And who are the stakeholders? If you see, we have got the ministry, we have got the states skill missions, we have got the sector skill councils, we have got the training partners, and at last, we have got the beneficiaries. If we look to each of the stakeholders at the policy level, I think a lot of work has already been done, and still efforts are being made. If we see the new PMKVY 3, there is a bottoms-up approach which is coming up, and I would like to give this credit to Jutika Patanka ma'am, who has, set up the district skill committees, which is going to provide complete information for execution, for skill gap survey, for job analysis. So all the information will be bottoms up. The district skill committee will gather the informations, will do the execution implementation. Otherwise, earlier it used to be top-down approach, everything being planned at the state capital or the country capital and moving down. So this would be a significant change, and we are fortunate to have Madam Patanka here, who took this initiative in last 2 years to put this in format into place. Thank you, ma'am, for that. So I think RPL, again, a government initiative, which I talked about, 47 crore people we have to reach out with RPL. It's already there in place. We have got different formats of RPL where industry can do it on their own. Government will provide certification, or there is a government funding to facilitate RPL. Apprenticeship is such a big scheme, and the ministry has focused on a large way. A lot of the rules and regulations have been made so friendly to facilitate or scale up apprenticeship. I think industry must take the best of opportunity by promoting apprenticeship in their respective industry. These are two, and the third, the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, the 3.0, which is coming up next month, most likely. I think, and every ministry or department in the country have got one scheme or the other for skill development. The other important area would be entrepreneurship, which we talked about. Again, Ministry of Skill Development is coming up with a new scheme, which I think our chief guest would be talking about during her talk. Now, when we talk about the stakeholders, who are the stakeholders? The first stakeholder, when I say beneficiary, and every stakeholder has a role to play. Now, policy level, funding, everything is being facilitated. But is the support also coming from the last stakeholder or the main stakeholder, which is the beneficiary? I think there is a lot need to be worked with the beneficiary in terms of their awareness, in terms of their aspiration and recognition. I think the sincerity they come with the attendance, what we have observed in last 3-4 years, average 35 to 40% attendance. It shows the level of sincerity the beneficiary have. And if this is the level of sincerity, the impact of training would not be as we all are looking forward to. So beneficiary, and how will the beneficiary become aspirational? We have to give in recognition. And how will recognition come? I think a lot of ways are being worked out again by the government and the overall ecosystem. But I think there are 2-3 ways by which we can improve. One is skill competition. If you see India, culturally, the people are very sporting in nature. All sports, even kabaddi, football, which has got nothing to do with economy. If they can kabaddi, football, kusti, all of them have got so much of visibility, and now you can see there is an investment into all this type of sports, because Indians by nature, they like sports. So if we promote skill competition, as you know, every 2 years we have got world skill competition, and similarly we do India skill competition. I think going forward we have to have a calendar for skill competition, which will, because skill competition will bring in recognition, and this will bring in respect in to the participants as well as the parent. We all know that in the country, 60 to 70% of the decisions of a child is taken care by the parent. And for that, we have to make it aspirational. The parent need to be informed about the opportunity. The parent need to be informed about the importance of skilling. The parent need to be informed what is the growth, in each of the skills. How can they become a world champion? Last year, India for the first time won 1 gold, 1 silver, 1 bronze, and 15 medallion. So going forward, the plan is that can we do every quarter 1 skill competition at a district level? So 4 at a district level, 2 at a commissionary level, 1 at a state level. So this is where, going forward, we can make it aspirational. We have to do counseling, mapping of the attributes of the participants. What are their skill sets? What are the areas of strength? What are the areas of weakness? And they should be counseled to get into training in those sectors where the areas of interest lies. So these are some of the few points which I wanted to highlight. And thank you again for the time. I will be here for consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Shri Jaykant Singh ji. It is always a pleasure to hear you with your vast experience and different portfolios that you handled. We are sure that to the skill sector in the country more and more with coming years. Thank you so very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, dear audiences, we would like to welcome our chief guest for the day as Ms. Sunita Sangiji has joined us. She is the Principal Advisor, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India. On behalf of ASSOCHAM and all the audiences, we welcome you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for giving us your valuable time. Thank you, ma'am. Moving on, the next address, we move on to the guest of honor for the day, Ms. Jyotika Patankar. She is the Additional Secretary of Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. We request Ms. Jyotika Patankar ji to please enlighten the audience with her kind words. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
So very good afternoon to all the participants of this webinar. I have been listening closely to some of the speakers before me, and it is a privilege to be able to address such a stalwart gathering of experts in the skill ecosystem. What I would like to say in my brief talk would probably be a little different because all of you are far more experienced and well-versed with skill development, skill training, and all its attendant issues. And I would only venture to give you some kind of a perspective from the point of view of a generalist, from the point of view of policy, and from the point of view of those who would see the wood rather than the trees. Previous speakers have talked about the various programs of skill training which the ministry has caused to happen, which the ministry is supporting, and which various organizations, other ministries, institutions, groups, agencies, industry have been taking up from time to time. Now, one point which has come significantly to light always when we analyze the success or failure of skill training programs is this whole business of mobilization of candidates for skill training. Advocacy and mobilization are very important aspects of the entire skill training chain. And it's very important to do this correctly so that you get the right candidates in for training, and then they will benefit from the training and go on towards employability and employment and contribution to the productivity and production in the economy. In order to improve advocacy, very significantly, the new version of the PMKVY, which is shortly going to come upon us, has resorted to roping in the district skill committees in a big way. The previous speaker, Mr. Jaikant Singh, talked about district skill committees very briefly. He was kind enough to touch upon my small contribution in causing these to happen. I'd like to say that in the World Bank loan assisted program Sankalp of the ministry, we are very consciously trying to push decentralization of skill planning and skill training for reasons of last mile or last person connectivity, so that each and every person can be included as a participant in some way in the whole process of planning for skill training. And so that the aspirations of all can also be taken into account. So if decentralization through district skill committees and their planning really happens, then we would have much more effective advocacy and mobilization of good candidates, and skill training in general might prove to be much more successful than if we just left the exercise of selecting possible candidates to training partners or to other select groups of persons. The second aspect that I would like to talk about is that the district skill committees could also look at this whole business of skills as distinct from livelihoods. We have now, at least for 30 years past and more, we've been in government closely associated with poverty alleviation programs, and nearly everybody is familiar now with the concept of self-help groups, with the concept of beneficiaries, individual beneficiaries who stand to gain from these anti-poverty programs, various schemes of the government, central, state, and others, which take off from time to time to promise increased incomes, better opportunities, and all-round socio-economic development. When we talk about skills, we need to focus on skills as distinct from livelihoods, because skills are a step ahead of livelihoods. Livelihoods are possibly about sustenance and subsistence. Skills would need to ensure that we are talking about equipping a person with competencies well above the normal and the untrained to do a job, to render a person competent to do a job in a much better way, which would greatly enhance production and productivity. So skills as distinct from livelihoods is something we need to keep in mind when we talk about skill training. The third thing that we really need to pay attention to, because it's completely missing everywhere across the spectrum, is quality. What do I mean by quality? By quality, I mean that when a person is trained, when a person is skill trained, the person has to be able to do that particular job with maximum quality. When we say that a skill trained and certified person definitely commands higher wages, higher remuneration, definitely ensures better livelihood for himself or herself, he or she must give quality to his or her employer commensurate with that incremental increase in wages or in costs. Skills come with a cost. If you employ a skilled person, you have to pay a higher cost, and therefore you are entitled to quality. But across the board, we see that we have not really been able to focus on quality. Our assessment systems also, unfortunately, do not focus on quality. And this is very serious, because effectively what it means is that our supply of qualified and quality skilled labor is not really so significant as to make people pay a premium for engaging it. So to give an example, when we were talking about extending decentralization and skill training to gram panchayats would, I think, be reluctant to employ only skilled certified persons because they feel that they could get skilled or unskilled, uncertified persons at a much lower rate than skilled certified, and possibly the difference in work would not be that great. This is an alarming thing. We should recognize the warning signals here and really focus on quality. We are trying now to take decentralization a stage further and bring it right down to the level of gram panchayats, where we are looking at gram panchayats as potential employers of skilled certified labor. And we are also saying that gram panchayats will have a role in skill planning for skill training of aspirational eligible youth. And then the gram panchayat skill plans would eventually dovetail into district skill plans, which would also then play their own role in the overall state skill plan and the national skill planning scenario. So gram panchayats need to employ skilled certified labor because the idea is if they do that, the kind of services that they are rendering would be high on quality, citizens would benefit, the quality of life, the standard of living would go up because gram panchayats render services in sanitation, waste management, upkeep of roads, infrastructure, which are not really privatized as of now. If people get used to skilled certified persons providing quality, there would be a demand for much better quality services, not just from panchayats, but a demand in general. And we would actually be creating markets, wider markets, which would demand skills in different areas. And this would really open up the economy for skills. My final point that I would like to make is that we need to be very clear that when we classify rural and urban, we do not make a distinction between quality for urban and quality for rural. We have to ensure that the best quality is made available and equally the best quality is made available to rural and to urban. So by doing that, you will suddenly see that you are expanding markets. You are looking at emerging markets in areas which hitherto have not been addressed by traditional skill training. This is possibly through our leveraging skills through gram panchayats to open up this field. If our experiment and our pilots succeed, we would be paving the way for a much greater demand for skills in general, and everything, whether it's public-private partnerships, whether it's the industry connection with skilled labor and the general augmentation of demand for skilled labor, everything would be impacted in a very significant way by this increase in demand over sectors, over geographies, which we have not yet taken into account. We have all talked about the change that COVID-19 has brought. We are talking about blended modes of learning. Let me, before I wind up, touch briefly on what COVID-19 has not changed. COVID-19 has not changed the need for all of us in the skill system to ensure that we address the aspirations of youth, ensure that we have last mile connectivity in reaching out to gender, to the differently abled, and in reaching out to rural areas and urban areas equally. And in order to give the maximum opportunity to all to participate in skill training, derive benefit from skill training, we have to ensure that there is complete dissemination of information and awareness from the side of all those engaged in skill training across the country, all sections of society, all corners of the country. We cannot compromise on quality. COVID-19 has not changed the need to compromise on quality. and inclusivity and dissemination of information, and constant and research use of technology in order to make it available to the last person is very, very important, because we have to ensure that nobody is left out in the race. And the problem with blended learning and all the rest of this is that we might well make it even harder for those who had been deprived to get back into the fold or to get into the fold for the first time. So we need to be particularly conscious of all these things. And skill training has a long way to go. Skill training in schools would need to take off in a much bigger way only with the meaningful intervention of the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Skill Development could at best be an advising partner if they are to be so asked. But for skill training of youth, for skill training, for identification of aspirations, and to ensure inclusivity and to ensure quality and credibility above all else is what we need to focus on. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so very much, ma'am. And it's so good to know as an industry body that how well the system is aligned with what is exactly needed at the ground level to all the aspirants of our nation in the skill development industry. And your thoughts on inclusion, poverty elimination are fantastic. And we all, the audience of today, would like to join hands with you as much as we can to make sure that your thoughts convert into action and benefit the marginal sections of the society. Thank you so very much for your kind words. Well, moving ahead, ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to request our chief guest for the day, Ms. Sunita Sanghi to enlighten us with her kind words. And we would like to mention a brief on her experience of life. Sunita Sanghi is an Indian Economist Service Officer of 1984 batch. She is currently posted as Senior Advisor in Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. She's been actively involved in shaping the skill development and employment landscape in India since 2008. She was involved in putting in place the coordinated action on skill development, including NSDC board in Planning Commission, NSDC and Prime Minister's Council on Skill Development. She organized the meetings of NSDC board in erstwhile Planning Commission, coordinated 5 subgroups set up for various aspects of skill development and provided input for PM's council meetings. She played first national policy on skill development in the year 2009, and also a very crucial role of setting up the NSDA. She coordinated the work of the report on subgroup of chief ministers on skill development in 2015 and spearheaded at NITI Aayog compendium titled Skilling for Employability Best Practices. She was holding charge of Director General at NSDA, a regulator. She has participated in various prestigious national and international forums as a distinguished speaker to deliberate on various skill development and employment issues. She has published articles in renowned national and international journals on the subjects of employment and skilling. She has addressed various challenges in the skill and employment space through her research work. Ma'am, it's a pleasure to have you amongst us, and we all are keenly waiting for your kind words of wisdom. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. I think my colleague from the ministry, Jyotika, has already laid down, and she has categorically indicated the kind of work that the ministry is doing. In my small address, I would like to highlight the different dimensions of skill development right post-independence and how the progress has been made and what are the challenges that we are yet to address in our journey, so that what Jyotika has said, that there is needs to be a focus on quality and there has to be premium for the skilled manpower. Then how do we ensure that people are actually commanding premium on the skills? Now, if you look at the post-independence, we see that the vocational education and training in India, primarily they were targeted at students who were either academically poor or from a disadvantaged background. And if you look at the demand side, even now, the slow progress perhaps in the manufacturing base and trades which happened primarily in the informal sector kept literally a lid on the large scale demand for the skilled personnel. Now, the demand and supply of the skilled manpower was therefore at a very low level of equilibrium. The things have changed since then. But if you look at the national education policy in 1986, and today we are in 2020. So even in 1986, there was a huge focus on introduction of systematic, well-planned and rigorously implemented program of vocational education, because it was thought that people, if they move out of the school education ecosystem, there has to be a seamless transition from the world of education to the world of work. But if we see today, this has not happened. And the very first initiative that the government of India took was in 1988, when it was decided that maybe close to about 25% of all the students would be in the vocational education stream by the year 2000. Now, if you look at the knowledge economy of the 21st century, and in particular the spectacular GDP growth of the first decade of the current millennium, it has resulted in skill shortages for new age trades and services, especially in the increasingly tertiary economy. Now, this trend was perhaps complemented by the huge demographic bulge experienced by the India. Now, while the higher education shortfall has been partly filled by the phenomenal expansion of the private sector in management and engineering education, during the 1990s and the first decade of the millennium, the skill sector investment actually did not raise proportionately until the late 2000s due to maybe various reasons, including an immature ecosystem that was actually there. Now, the vocational education scheme that was launched in 1988 by the Ministry of Education did not have a very material impact even after 25 years. It was estimated that only about 4.8% of the persons under the age of 15 years had a vocational education qualification to their credit by the end of the 11th five-year plan. And the investment into the skills through the ITI ecosystem alone was not sufficient to cater to the increasing demand. Because by then the ITIs were shifted from the central control to the state control, and there was very less investment and priority given to the ITIs upgrade their infrastructure equipment to meet the increasing demand of the industry then. Now, considering this particular gap, the government of India had in 2008 initiated, Jaykant was representative of National Skill Development Corporation, in 2008 that we will bring on board the public-private partnership and the private sector so that we can improve upon our investment in the skill ecosystem, because it was realized that the kind of targets that we have to our credit, skilling 500 million people, it's next to impossible for the government alone to meet those targets, because the government resources have a competing demands and you can't be spending every money on that. That is why the NSDC came into being. And the Skill India mission that was launched in 2015 also provided a larger vision to the skilling effort of the country. It also set the goal of emerging as the skill capital of the world and sought to galvanize the efforts through a policy framework, which not only focused on creating the appropriately skilled manpower, but also focused on building up a system of catalyzing and then correcting and aligning with the standards such that they are not only in demand domestically, but also internationally, so that India can supply to the rest of the world and actually become the skill capital of the world. And we realize that the sustenance of the India's growth rates and the rise in the living standards are also seen in alignment with the objective of realizing this particular demographic advantage that India is expected to witness over the next 2 decades. Now, this advantage that we have vis-a-vis the other countries is not unlimited. It is not infinite. It is a very finite advantage. And if you look at the country like India, it's so diverse. Even this advantage is not uniformly distributed. If you see the southern part of the country or the western part of the country, they have already aged or they're in the aging process. It's only these states which we erstwhile Bimaru states that we used to call maybe UP, Chhattisgarh and Bihar, where we actually have the demographic advantage. But the challenge in these states is that while we have a demographic advantage in these states, we have a paucity of level of education of many those people who are actually dropping out of the system. And there's also paucity of the right kind of the infrastructure and the training institutions which can really provide impetus to the efforts that the government of India has been making. Although, as Jaykant was talking about, that we do have the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendras, and we also have these world scale competition kind of the schemes which are trying to create an aspiration. But then in the absence of the right kind of the infrastructure, it really becomes very difficult to meet the requirement of the industry. Now, if you look at the total progress that has been made, I would like to say that in terms of the training and the regulatory ecosystem, although we are at a nascent stage, but there are efforts which have been made today that to improve upon our regulatory ecosystem. We have built on the system such that now we have only one unified regulatory framework, whether it is a short-term training program or a long-term training program that is being done by various entities in the ecosystem, whether it is ITIs or it is DGT or other central ministry or the state government, we have one regulatory framework. Now, this regulatory framework has also tried to build in the standardization in the ecosystem by bringing in the national skill qualification framework, which is a competency base, which actually guarantees that you have a certified content through the national occupational standard and qualification packs. So anybody who is trained in these qualifications in a particular job role across India will have the same kind of a competency standards. And we have also, to improve upon the regulatory ecosystem and the training ecosystem, the industry and to improve the industry relevance and industry connect, the sector skill councils are literally playing a very, very important role. I think one of the sector skill council, health sector skill council, was also representing on this particular panel. And we also have the PPP based market oriented training program through the internal training partners and the assessment bodies. We are working towards what we call the neutral assessment centers. Today only our Honorable Minister had launched the new assessment agencies and bodies guideline and also the awarding body guidelines. So as to improve the quality, what my colleague Jutika has been focusing on, yes, quality is a challenge. And I think with the approval of these guidelines, launch of these guidelines, and with them standardizing this certification process and assessment process, we will certainly see that there is going to be an improvement as far as the quality is concerned. In terms of scale of skill provision, given the fact that we keep hearing, and I think the latest PLFS survey is also talking about, that we have just about 10% of the people in this country who have a formal skill training. Like this is a 2018-19. But if you look at the total data that this ministry, the Ministry of Skill Development and other central ministries are doing, in the last 5 years, we have trained more than 5 crore people. So if you are training at that speed, I think we will be in a position to achieve some kind of a sim balance as far as availability of skill training manpower is concerned. There's a huge ecosystem of not only the Industrial Training Institute, both in the private sector as also in the government sector, but we also have the training partners in the private sectors who may be running either the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendras or facilitating government in delivery of services. They have their own training centers and government is using them to deliver the training for the segment, which is the segment which may have either dropped out, or maybe there is change in the technology requiring reskilling and upskilling. We have also focused on what is the apprenticeship domain, has also seen the transformation and path-making changes, which was brought about by the Ministry of Skill Development in 2014-15, wherein we amended the Apprenticeship Act because it was realized that unless and until we are able to have an industry-relevant workforce, it is no point skilling people. Therefore, when we brought about the changes in the Apprenticeship Act, it was made so open that any industry, if they are wanting people of their own choice, so they can bring in the optional trade. wherein they can have an apprentice of their choice and they can participate in the program, and they can have a person who is relevant to their need. Now, the level of apprentices in country have really gone up from 1.1 lakh in 2015-16 to close to about 2.5 lakh in 19-20. And we are hoping that the way the apprenticeship has been accepted by the industry, it is going to go up in a significant manner. Now, in terms of the aspirational value also, we know that the vocational education training continues to face the challenges of low aspiration value due to a variety of reasons. It may be a social reason or maybe a religious or customary reason. But the government of India, through its various efforts, has tried to change the scenario by building the pathways to the higher education from the vocational training to the credit transfer framework. And we have also introduced a convocation kind of a system in the industrial training institute so that it becomes like a certification and proper ceremony, which becomes very attractive for the student. And there are continuous reforms to build certification and assessment credibility. Today only our Honorable Prime Minister has released a very unique certificate, which not only carries the number of the year in which the certificate has been issued, but also details about the state, the center, the job role, the awarding body, and the assessment agencies. So this is the uniqueness with which this ministry or the ecosystem has been working towards. And we're also thinking of linking with the National Academic Depository so that it becomes digital. And there are world-class skill institutions which have been set up. And there are 3 Indian Institute of Skills, which my colleague Jyotika has been leading, which have been set up at least in Mumbai. We have in partnership with Tata, and also in Ahmedabad in partnership with Tata. These Indian Institute of Skills have been, the foundation stones have been laid down. And in Mumbai, perhaps shortly, we may be starting in a temporary campus, the skill training as well. So this was the effort to bring on board the private sector participation in improving and setting up the world-class skill institution. And to also facilitate the industry, we have developed the labor market information system in terms of ASSOCHAM portal, which was launched by the Honorable Minister in July, wherein more than a database of more than 1 crore of our youth is there who are seeking employment, and there is a database with their level of skills, what is the level of their skills, and they can be taken on role by the industry based on their skill set. Now, if you look at I think my colleague has already touched upon in terms of the post-COVID, because COVID has shown many, many challenges. Today, the kind of skilling that we have been having in terms of a face-to-face or a classroom teaching cannot happen. So we need to make changes in which the way in terms of giving the skilling, and also in terms of the job roles that may be required. Because while we were still struggling with the changes that the technology was bringing about in the job roles, the process of change has been fast-tracked by the COVID. Because many of the job roles have just disappeared. The sectors which have been impacted badly by the COVID, the job roles have gone haywire. And there are many other sectors which have actually the job roles where you have the new job roles which have come on board and for which you need to have a training. Now, several observers have also contended that the COVID-19 is set to transform the education and skilling completely. And I will also contend that we were already in the mid of, as I said, paradigm shift in education and skills, even before COVID-19, through a movement towards personalized and experiential learning, distributed classrooms, and increasing significance of life skills like adaptation, resilience as compared to traditional academic traits. Now, while COVID-induced restrictions are getting lifted progressively, some of the changes in learning shall be permanent. Digitization and online delivery shall drive the new leg of experiential and personalized learning for candidates and shall be ingrained in all aspects of the learning process. Now, this COVID-induced socioeconomic dislocation, however, gives us the policy window to reimagine the system to make them deliver superior outcomes as required to satisfy the aspirations of our youth and translating the demographic advantage into a productivity dividend by enabling availability of decent jobs and entrepreneurial opportunities. Now, over the last several decades, India has really made large number of efforts to catch up with the advanced education and skill ecosystems. But for the skill ecosystem in particular, we have created a new ecosystem over the last decade to address the challenges of access and employability through accredited long-term and short-term skill infrastructure, competency-based. Now, the pandemic gives us the opportunity to seek quantum improvement in all these parameters and leapfrog to a whole new system for the future generations, which is suitable for the Indian context. Now, it is not necessary that we go through the same route of evolution in our systems as has been the experience of several developed countries. For example, if you look at the e-commerce adoption rates and growth, it is very high in India compared to the most developed countries. The per capita consumption of internet, if you look at data, is highest in India across the world. And we are leapfrogging to a whole new ecosystem of digital payments, public services, and governance. And I think this can be made possible at several levels in the skill ecosystem. If you look at the governance level, we can have a greater digitization in governance and regulation, and we can actualize the intent to move towards outcome-oriented regulation from input-oriented. Learning outcomes and employability has to come to the forefront from the traditional parameters of infrastructure, attendance, and certification. And from the MSD perspective, we have actually expedited the establishment of NCVT as a full-fledged regulator, which is empowered with the digital capabilities to improve the governance and enhance credibility of vocational certifications. In fact, the awarding body and assessment body guidelines that I just mentioned there have been released today, and we are hoping that if they are implemented and when we start implementing them, we will see a tremendous change, not only in the quality of those who are coming out of the ecosystem, but also in the processes in terms of assessment and certification process. Now, from the delivery perspective, I think blended mode with online videos and remote learning pedagogy can alleviate the loss of learning due to physical classroom challenges. But here again, there are challenges because not all job roles are akin to the online learning or to the blended learning. So we really, this is work in progress, and we have been working on it to identify which are the sectors which will go completely online and which are the sector where we can have a remote learning and we can also have a blended learning, so that there is a continuity in the ecosystem. In fact, our two bodies, the Director General of Training, which is looking after the long-term training, has already initiated a Bharat Skill Portal, and large number of courses are available on that. And NSDC, which is represented by Jaikant, has an e-skill portal, which is also offering close to about 40 courses free of cost for online. And an added challenge for the skill ecosystem, which remains, is that a significant part of training has to be practical and hands-on work. So until these lockdown measures are completely eased, I think we will have to make use of integrating AR, VR with online video classes. And ministry as such has been crowdsourcing ideas on best ways to make a scalable transition, because we can't leave our students, our youths in the limbo. We have to ensure that there is a continuity for them. And overall, if you look at the digital first skilling, would definitely include a change at all levels of skill value chain, whether it is mobilization, counseling, pedagogy, because you just can't have a same kind of a mechanism across the skill value chain when you have this kind of a pandemic or a disaster. This disaster has really shown us the way that we need to change our processes to suit such kind of an environment. And while COVID-related restrictions have limited the access to physical training center, but I think this online training has shown a silver lining that yes, digital first skilling can facilitate us for this. Now, again, the financing of skill has to be reimagined as over the long term. As I said, that the government alone cannot. Government can be a facilitator. Government can be, it cannot, because we need to think about that while government will provide funding for the marginalized section, there has to be some kind of a buy-in from many stakeholders. And we have to ensure that the livelihood continuity is there. Now, if you look at the lifelong learning, many of us have utilize the partial lockdown period to add to our skills through online courses or learning new skills at home, the practice of lifelong learning and continuous upskilling for staying relevant for the labor market has been accelerated through this particular disruption. And if you look at the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, and I am 100% sure, because the big change that has been brought about is that there is going to be a demand for skill driven. Because while there is not a particular reference about a skill program, but the kind of initiatives that have been taken, whether for the entrepreneurship or whether for the MSME or for the export, it is going to require highly skilled manpower. This policy, therefore, reset is aimed at greater individualization of production across sectors through interventions like performance-linked incentive, behavioral change, and other things. So the skill development programs and skill mission has a greater role to play when it comes to the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. Now, the policy window which has been provided, therefore, by the COVID-19 allow us the scope to dismantle a number of traditional metrics used to quantify the achievement and place new parameters across sectors. From a skilling perspective, I think putting quality, access, employability, digital delivery, and light regulation over quantitative targets shall be the new paradigm. And I just want to close my talk by saying that I started with that in 1986. There was a focus in the education policy on vocationalization. Now in 2020, the new education policy has once again laid focus on the vocationalization of the school education right from class 6, because it is now opening doors for the students from class 6 to have an experience. Because if you look at the data, it clearly shows that large number of students are not able to cope with this education system, they drop out. So if you start having an experiential learning right from class 6, we are opening up the gates and alternative opportunities to our youth, that yes, if they drop out, there is an alternative they can do. And we, from the Ministry of Skill Development and Ministry of Education, are working in close synergy and tandem to achieve the very important vision of the Honorable Prime Minister to make India the skill capital of the world, and for integrating the school education, formal education with the vocational education. But I will just say that this is all possible with the active support of the industry also. Industry has to handle all the initiative. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so very much for your detailed version of how the government is looking at this whole scenario. Of course, we understand what has happened as a pandemic, but definitely for the education and skill development, we have to make sure that we create a blessing in disguise for our youth, and we are able to train them, taking the digitalization forward with Skill India. Going further, ma'am, we have many questions already on the panel, but shortage of time, we will be able to address very few of them. So I will request our honorable guest of honor and chief guest to address a couple of questions that we have picked up, as most of the people are very eager to know from the audience today that how the government side, how the ministry in particular is looking at digitalization of the skill training programs and making it new norm of the skill development initiatives.
I think, as I said, we already, will Jyotika like to say something? No, I think she is. As I said, that we have already initiated the process. We have the Bharat Skill Portal, which is developed by the Director General of Training, so that we are in a position to continue the skilling, and it's an online skilling platform. That is for the long-term training. We also have for the short-term training the e-skill portal, which NSDC has been hosting, and there are 40 odd job roles which has already been identified. This is one aspect. As far as other things are concerned, in terms of costing of these training programs, the work is in progress. We have a Common Norms Committee, and we are going to deliberate in the Common Norms Committee how do we make a costing of these training program? But yes, ministry has already initiated, and our regulator has also issued a letter in May itself that the content that is available otherwise for the face-to-face training can also be utilized for the online training. And many of our sector skill councils have their own learner management system. They are using those systems to ensure that the training does not suffer, and they have already started the training. I think if I have missed out something, Jaykant may like to indicate from the NSDC side. Jaykant? I think he's also not there. So from the ministry side, I think this is what I just want to say, that we have the eSkill portal and we have the Bharat Skill portals. So we are very well aware of the fact. So already work has been started and we are promoting it.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So I'll just take one more question before we call it a day for this conference. So a lot of people are also very inquisitive to know about how the ministry and various government platforms are looking at utilization of already existing infrastructure, especially the revamp on ITIs pertaining to absorption of more variety of courses in the ITI.
As far as I am aware, the Director General of Training is looking into the course curriculum, and they have a sectoral trade committees. These sectoral trade committees keep on discussing the industry relevant job roles, and they make the changes in their course curriculum, appropriate changes in the course curriculum. So the job roles which have lost their relevance, they are in the process of being weeded out, and job roles which are required, they are being taken on board. Lately, the has already partnered with IBM, Cisco, Adobe to introduce the latest technology and latest job roles in their kitty so that students can be trained in the modern technology and the latest job roles as well.
Well, thank you so very much, ma'am. It is very, very encouraging to hear you and other speakers today, because you rightly said that without proper parallel infusion of the efforts of the ministry as well as departments as well as the industry, this Herculean task of making India the skilled manpower of the world is not possible. And all of us have to understand our role and responsibility at ground level. And we are very, very thankful and very, very glorified to see how ministry is changing gears so fast in bringing in the reforms like PMKVY, in reforms like you just mentioned on the assessment side of it, reforms like you said on the awarding body side of it. So, these reforms will definitely make a more centralized approach where it will give a very fair chance to all participants as well as educators or trainers to make maximum effort and impact to this much needed industry. At ASSOCHAM, we would like to now thank each one of you for participating in this webinar and bringing out the things that we are doing at our own levels and giving out ideas, sharing knowledge. And I'm sure that these kind of webinars and these kind of engagements will help the ministry to work more closely with what the exact requirement of the industry is. And I would also like to close in, Ma'am Sunita ji, that we at ASSOCHAM have got into trainings at various levels. We are now participating very, very actively in various skill development projects to create models for our industry, which can be replicated to other parts of the country as well. And we are very much available to the ministry for any kind of intervention which is required from the industry side and which is required for bridging the gap between the industry and the policymakers at the top level. And with this, we would like to close in the day's session. We thank each the guests, the audiences, Honorable Chief Guest for the day, Sunita Sanghi ji, to be with us. And we hope that you contribute and keep supporting ASSOCHAM's efforts and industry efforts in improving the whole ecosystem as a whole in skill development. The whole country today knows that this particular area is one which needs maximum attention, and everybody is standing tall to their responsibility at their own ends. Once again, we thank each one of the participants for today. Sunita ma'am, as ASSOCHAM, very soon we would like to take appointment from you and bring to you few ideas, few suggestions that we have from the industry together on a piece of paper, and we hope that you support this cause even stronger in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for participating with us.